Hey everyone, welcome to the PFF Betting Podcast. I am your host, Kendall Valenzuela, joined by senior data scientist Ben Brown. We have an awesome jam-packed show for you today. We are breaking down all this NFL news, looking at the futures market, talking about all the quarterback changes, and of course, going over some draft props. So let's get into it. Hoops fans, the latest offer from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is too good to pass up. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. It's that simple. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you can still take your shot at a big payday. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Basketball Contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code PFF at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus, minimum age and location requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Ben, I'm depressed. I actually can't even lie. I just have to open up with that yesterday was the worst day of my life, essentially. And I'm unwell. I'm unwell.
I mean, we tried to prep people for this potential outcome, but yeah, even, it hit you like a ton of bricks. I felt for you all day. I mean, it would almost be like, Griffey or Ken Griffey Jr. or somebody leaving Seattle. I feel like, because Russell Wilson has been it, right? Like he has been, he's pulled up multiple seasons as like a top 5 PFF passing quarterback in the NFL for a given season. So he, definitely exceeded expectations. I can see why Seattle fans are obviously distraught. And to me, it signals like a pretty depressing outlook for the franchise in choosing, Pete Carroll over Russell Wilson, which is just not the correct decision. So
it was a horrible day. Like, for those who don't know, I'm a diehard Seahawks fan, grew up in Seattle my whole life. And it's just, it's a weird situation, right? Because this is my first time that I've had to go through this. I've never really had that, core quarterback, core player from any team leave. And I think the weirdest part, when I was talking, I had a ton of people in my DMs just, sending me crap. I'm like, I get it. He's going to the Broncos, the team I used to cover. It's a weird situation, but it was weird because the Seahawks for Seattle, I think the worst part for fans is that the Seahawks for Seattle was their saving grace because, we don't have an NBA team. We just got a hockey team that are pretty bad. We love the Kraken, but they're pretty bad right now. And you have the Seattle Mariners, who have the longest playoff drought of any American professional sport. So the Seahawks, for at least for me, was like the only real reason to watch sports and get into it. So it was a weird situation. Russell Wilson got traded, kind of laughed it off. If you went through my Twitter, I'm so sorry. That's how I coped with things yesterday. It was just being funny. But then, Bobby Wagner, which we knew was going to happen, that happened. And then it was just, it made it real. And I'm sad. It was the worst. It was the worst. It was coming eventually, but it was the worst. It was the worst day.
Yeah, I mean, the way that it happened and the decisions that led into it, I think it has to be so frustrating, right? Because I do think Seattle has, one of, if not the best fan bases in the NFL. I'm sure you would agree with that, right? So to have, the franchise destruction play out like it did here, and them probably in a lot of ways make the wrong decision. It's just really unfortunate. So my heart, as a Minnesota fan that has never experienced any sort of winning whatsoever, my heart goes out to you. It goes out to the Seattle fan base as well.
I'm with you now. Now I'll be a part of that poverty franchise.
Miserable.
I love to see it. I'm just going to be miserable. It's like, and we'll get into it, but it's like, what do they do? The quarterback, the draftees, the potential draftees, not great. The quarter, I think Doug Kyde said it best, and he was like, it is not a great time to need a quarterback in the NFL right now. And we're feeling that with all the news. But we can get into those, I guess. I mean, I can play out the pain again, but it was crazy though. We had a ton of news. We almost were coming into this podcast like, okay, what are we going to touch on? Draft props, all that stuff. And then all this news came out. Aaron Rodgers said he's returning to Green Bay, which you and I kind of talked about last podcast, right? We said he's probably not going anywhere. Kudos to you. You were trying to convince me that Russell was leaving the Seahawks. I didn't want to believe it. He's now going to the Broncos. And now today, Carson Wentz is becoming a Washington Commander. At least I'm not as down bad as the Washington what's going on over there. But the Washington Commanders involving like multiple day 2 selections, I believe. So when you see all that news and what happened in the past couple days, I guess, what are your general feelings about the landscape of the NFL right now and where we see these quarterback moves going? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do think it was obviously a really big win for Denver, not only to get Russell Wilson, but in what they gave up to, right? I mean, just a couple draft picks, a couple guys that weren't necessarily going to be around for all that long or like really relevant, I would say, on the Broncos roster. So I think it's a pretty significant win, keeping in place like a really strong wide receiver unit that's really young, that can definitely has a lot of potential to fit in with Russell Wilson's skill set. So I think that's a big win. And I do think it signals, this really deep, long-standing rebuild that needs to happen in Seattle. So some of the rumors surrounding like them potentially being a player for like Deshaun Watson or Kirk Cousins or something like that, it just doesn't add up, right? It doesn't make any sense really, right? Like maybe if you think, Pete Carroll's trying to extend out his window and feels the need to actually have to win in 2022, but if he does that, why doesn't he just smooth things over with Russell Wilson? So I don't think Seattle is any sort of like buyer in the quarterback market now. I do think that they're probably going to be sellers, maybe even with like a Tyler Lockett or somebody else being shipped out of town. But dark days in Seattle, dark days in a lot of other cities as well. So I do think, we talked about the quarterback carousel. I think we've basically been, like you said, right so far and Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay and Russell Wilson kind of being the guy that was going to move. And I do think we're going to see, still some other moves happen here. What is turning out to be a pretty robust quarterback market for teams that are looking to offload some of these guys. Cause I do think, that's what Carson Wentz's trade today kind of signaled, right? Like the Colts got back a pretty decent package, much better than what I would have expected to get for Carson Wentz here. So I do think that means like, some of these mid-tier other guys, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, like they could command a pretty enticing option or a pretty enticing, return if they are ended up trading, is my opinion. Exactly. Seattle, when I listen to all the podcasts and digested everything, they're in a weird spot because then you have Pete Carroll too, who's 70 years old. And some people are saying, he's not going to stick around for a rebuild is what they're saying. And then, you go to the draft and the draft is just so not quarterback top heavy, right? We all know that. And so they've been linked to Malik. And it's just kind of like, it's these guys that really aren't going to bridge anything for you. They got Drew Lock, and I was just like, please tell me you're joking, but they got Drew Lock in that trade. And I don't know, like fans are going to be so mad if it happens that it's Drew Lock commanding the offense and it's going to be me. I will be leading that charge. But realistically, what are the other options? Okay. They go out, there's, Marcus Mariota, some of those guys, you're right. Deshaun Watson has some serious things coming up on Friday where we're going to get a lot of clarity into what's going on there. So another one too, is that I don't see Jordan Love going anywhere either. People were kind of talking a little bit about Jordan Love potentially, with Aaron Rodgers going back, and it doesn't make any sense. He's a $3.3 million backup for Aaron Rodgers. He has not a long resume, right? He doesn't have anything really to show there, and he has no leverage to work his way out of there. Right. So essentially it's a weird spot, especially for teams still needing quarterbacks. The Steelers, the Seahawks, the Falcons, the Titans, the Saints, and the Colts now. So it's just a weird situation to be in because I think the Carson Wentz trade showed how bad the quarterback draft class is. That they're not willing to do, teams are not willing to do that this year. Yeah. I mean, I think like you said, starting off,
there's like 10 to 15 teams that are linked to Malik Willis right now, right? Because he does seem like he is, the one real option that can potentially step in right away and kind of, provide not only a decent floor for some of these teams, but also a pretty high ceiling as well, kind of showcasing some visibility at the combine. So he is, I definitely think, an intriguing option. But outside of that, like, unless you fall in love with one of these quarterback prospects for whatever reason, and there's the pictures of Pete Carroll talking with Matt Corral. Maybe that's the direction they go. That's the spot they could definitely probably draft him in, and but they would need to know and be a lot more confident in one of these prospects than basically everybody else's. And when you kind of look at the previous history at the NFL draft level, when there is like one team that focuses in and kind of overdrafts certain players, that's never really worked out that well for that particular team. So I think buying into the consensus that this quarterback class is just not great, and there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. I do think that it's going to make for the Jimmy Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins of the world are probably going to be some of the best options here coming forward for the quarterback market, I would say. So.
Eric was sending me I'm going to call him hate slacks, but they weren't, because he was just, it was hate slacks though in messages. He's like, Kirk is on his way. And I'm like, I swear to God, if you dump Kirk Cousins onto me, I don't know what I'd be able to do.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, the Seahawks got a good haul of draft picks for what they gave up. They got Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and then that defensive lineman, Shelby Harris.
Yep.
And so, but it won't mean anything if we've seen it before, if they don't hit on those picks.
Right.
What are they going to do? And they don't have a good draft, beforehand or anything like that. But we saw a lot of the odds move, right? Super Bowl odds, NFC West odds, AFC West odds also too. Are you looking at any of these things and saying this has value now? Are you looking at the Arizona Cardinals potentially? They were today at plus 330 to win the NFC West. Say Broncos are now second behind the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, at plus 200. Are you looking at? I don't think it's Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl for the Broncos, especially going into that division. The AFC is just a madhouse of talent right now. So are you looking at any of those and saying like this may have a little bit of value?
Yeah, I definitely think the NFC is, the spot that I really want to, focus on from a betting perspective, because I do think the AFC is probably going to, cannibalize themselves with so many good quarterbacks, so many good teams. So I do think Arizona makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Kyler Murray is going to be back in the fold. Motivated Kyler Murray, motivated Cliff Kingsbury, maybe have a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth with how their season finished here in 2021. So I still think they have the tools to compete with a team like, the Los Angeles Rams. And outside of them, I don't personally buy into the San Francisco 49ers. So I do think the Arizona Cardinals make a lot of sense at plus 330, plus 350. And then another division that was kind of impacted by the quarterback carousel, the NFC East with Washington landing Carson Wentz. We did, the big betting talk is that their odds actually decreased or got worse basically after landing Carson Wentz. Obviously, there is some factor where the betting market is kind of folding in at least some sort of expectation of some of these really quarterback needy teams actually landing a guy like Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. So when that doesn't actually happen, there's going to be a little bit of an impact on their odds market. But I still think, the NFC East is going to be a two-team race, right? And I do think if you don't necessarily buy into Dallas, that Philadelphia, the team that I've probably been talking about more than any other team this offseason, still makes a lot of sense at their price to win that division. I do think if you expect Jalen Hurts to maybe take just a little bit of a step forward, the fact that they have 3 first-round picks, they're a team that can improve dramatically from where they were losing to Tampa Bay in the wild card round to actually being a legitimate contender in the NFC. So I like them quite a bit. But nothing's really popping up for me in the AFC, I would say right now.
Okay. I'll jump on the Jalen Hurts train with you though.
Right.
I do like that though, because you look at the NFC, right? Comparing the NFC quarterbacks, when I looked at this on the charts and stuff to the AFC, right. I mean, what are we talking about, Ben? It is really bad. And then you consider that Jimmy Garoppolo, okay, potentially isn't there. So you're really relying on for the young guys, the Jalen Hurtses, the Justin Fields, the Trey Lances potentially to step up in that division. So when you look at Kyler and obviously, Aaron Rodgers and those other guys, it's weakened by so much. And the talent between the AFC and the NFC is honestly kind of shocking a little bit.
Right. It is. I mean, it's basically Aaron Rodgers is an elite quarterback that hasn't won really whatsoever in the playoffs. And then Matthew Stafford is really kind of it from that, like, 1A upper echelon quarterback play in the NFC. And then there's a lot of guys that can be okay, but definitely have some question marks. And then there's, quarterbacks that are looking like they might be starting for teams and they're like barely above replacement level play, I would say. So it's going to be interesting. I do still think, where does Jimmy Garoppolo go? Does Kirk Cousins get traded? If they do, you got to expect, those guys to probably stay in the NFC. And maybe they can actually be at least playoff contenders in the right situation. But yeah, they're no way closer, I would say, to competing for a championship than where they are in their current structure. So I think, outside of that, it's really, it is literally just the Rams and the Packers, and then what you think of Dallas and what you think of Philadelphia. So those are definitely my 4 teams in the NFC right now, and it's going to be an ugly one, I think, in 2022.
It's going to be brutal. Did you see Aaron Rodgers just be a drama queen yesterday?
About his contract? Yeah, it's like, dude, I have to tweet out.
You know what? I did not get the record-setting contract, but I didn't get the spotlight for long enough because Russell came in and swooped over everything. I thought that was so funny. I'm like, what are you doing?
It's so
what are you doing?
Right.
It was so once I saw that and it was sent into our like group chats, and I was like, yeah, no, that makes sense that he just did not. He's just been like that though. It's just, oh God.
It's nauseating, honestly. Like I'm so
it really
sick
is.
of it. Like I would.
Are you fading Green Bay? I
can't. Yeah. It's like, I can't though. Right. Because
I know
what we just said, like, the Rams won the Super Bowl or whatever. They still were a team that PFF wasn't really all that high on. Of course, Eric Eager, the Rams splaining thing. We didn't really expect that whole, the whole equation to come together as well as it did. So buying into them again is really difficult. But if you're not buying into the Los Angeles Rams, like, who are you buying into, really, right? So that's why I keep gravitating towards Philadelphia. But outside of that, I do think, Green Bay makes a ton of sense, at least from on paper perspective, to make the Super Bowl out of the NFC, I would say.
The Rams are in a weird situation though themselves a little bit, right? Because you've got Andrew Whitworth considering retirement. Same with Aaron Donald, right? Von Miller is just shooting his shot with the Broncos again.
Right.
He's
he wants back.
He wants it back. He wants to run it back. He thinks they're getting a ring. So I don't know. And I guess those are the weird. OBJ, I guess, technically a free agent, and seeing what they're going to do there. But I guess I'm throwing a curveball at you, but what do you expect with that team? And can they run it back, or are you expecting a little bit, like we talked about last week, of that Super Bowl lull where you may not be going with them?
Yeah, I think everything kind of went really well for them in 2021. Obviously, Matthew Stafford kind of played close to his ceiling, but they also got a lot of those kind of performances from, auxiliary pieces, right? Like, I do think Cooper Kupp is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but is he the best wide receiver in the NFL, especially over the past 10 seasons like he showed last year? I'm not necessarily inclined to say that completely as well. So they had a lot of, high quality play at really crucial positions. If any of those take a step back, I think it's going to be really difficult for them to at least win the Super Bowl. But given the state of the NFC, it wouldn't be overly surprising from my perspective to see them actually at least get back to the Super Bowl, I would say. But I still think it's Green Bay. And then I would probably put Dallas and the Los Angeles Rams on the same tier. And then I think like Philadelphia and a couple of these other teams, depending on how the quarterback situation shapes out, are definitely below those 3, I would say.
Got it. Well, before we get into NFL draft props, Ben, just let me know who is going to be the Seahawks starting quarterback. Just tell me.
I mean, Geno Smith, maybe, I guess. Hopefully it's not Drew Lock. I don't know. I mean, I think they got to draft somebody. Do they though? Do they have to draft someone? They don't have to, but it doesn't. The trading for a quarterback right now, especially like what I would classify as like a mid-tier option, just makes no sense to me. So I do think if you want to do a complete rebuild, no, you don't have to draft a quarterback this year, but at some point you're going to have to address that situation because Drew Lock is definitely not going to be the guy. And I think they definitely know that already. So if you're not drafting a guy in 2022, you're hoping for like the number 1 pick and getting the top guy in 2023. And I think that's like the only 2 outcomes, basically, I would say. So
who's in 2023? Bryce Young.
Yeah, there's a few for sure. I mean,
I can't think of any others. Okay. I'm just sad. I'm just gonna I'm pushing my sadness.
I do think it's a better class. I do think it's a better class overall by quite a bit than what the 2022 class class has for sure.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
there's going to be options. I mean, CJ Stroud as well, Bryce Young, those guys will be up there.
You're right.
There's going to be quite a few, so it'll be okay.
Okay, there's hope. There's a little bit of hope, Ben. There's a little
hope.
bit of hope. Are you looking at any other team? This is the last curveball, I swear. Are you looking at any other team in the next couple weeks that you expect to make a move pretty quickly? Because we've seen those quarterback dominoes start to fall. Are you really keeping an eye on any other team or that you think is going to make a move pretty quickly?
I think the Colts are going to do something because unlike Seattle, their roster is set up to win now. They have been for the last 4 years. So they do make a lot of sense that if they can upgrade the quarterback position from Carson Wentz, to somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins, then I do think they are a legitimate playoff contender in the difficult AFC. Obviously, they were right on the doorstep last year with Carson Wentz. Didn't feel like he was the guy. So the next move I do think is going in their direction. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see who they actually end up going with here, because I don't think it's going to be Sam Ehlinger as the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts in 2022. So
you don't think so?
Nah.
You didn't put a bet on that?
No, I wish I could. So.
I know, I wish I could too. Well, it really is a fun time of year though. Not if you're a Seahawks fan, but any other time, it's really nice. So let's get into the draft props. All of those are released. I think I saw some on DraftKings, right? So you can go to a lot of places and get them. But obviously with all the news going around and the combine finishing up, like odds have shifted dramatically and they're changing. You were telling me it's been hard to even sit down and write something because when you look back, things are changing. So let's go into the easiest one, well, not the easiest one, but the first one, which is the first overall pick and where you see value in that. There's been a lot of movement with that too. I mean, even at the combine, people were tweeting and all that stuff.
Right. I mean, it was crazy because I think I've updated even the first overall pick for my article 3 times basically today, just kind of going back and checking it constantly. So I don't know the big news with the number 1 overall pick selection was Cam Robinson basically getting franchise tagged, left tackle for Jacksonville Jaguars. Our friend and colleague Doug Kayed had a pretty good tweet, I would say, about it. Basically said the Jaguars' decision to franchise Cam Robinson has a massive impact on free agency in the draft. There was buzz. Jacksonville was going to spend big in free agency on a tackle. If they do that, plus, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to go, left tackle, offensive line position at the first overall pick in the 2022 draft. So we have seen Aiden Hutchinson's, number basically move on to a heavy odds on favorite to be that number 1 selection. Now, I think it's a little bit overstated because I think, based on Doug's feeling, Jacksonville is going to be players in the offensive tackle market or the offensive line market in free agency. But if that doesn't happen, I could still see them potentially swinging the bat with the first overall pick and kind of taking Evan Neal. Maybe he's the one spot that I would say maybe has a little bit of value right now, but the ship definitely sailed on Aiden Hutchinson. So if there's anybody that I'd still be buying into, as crazy as it sounds, I know I've been on him for weeks. I've got way worse numbers than what he's at now, but I do think Evan Neal is probably the only one that I'd be betting right now, I would say.
Okay. You're kind of off on, I know Ike Ekwonu had a really great combine. And that's someone that jumped a lot on people's boards, his odds, everything after what he did as his workout. Yeah.
He jumped basically from 100 to 1 early on. And then, the Athletic mock draft article came out, bumped him up to 5 to 1. I think he was basically plus 190 here before the Cam Robinson franchise tag situation, but he makes some sense. I still think he is, profiles as a much better run blocker than pass blocker. Evan Neal's definitely the guy that, leads this particular offensive line class in pass protection. So I think, given the state of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'd be inclined to lean more so in the direction of the really solid pass blocker than run blocker. That's why I think Evan Neal makes a lot of sense. And he also has, freshman, sophomore year in college, played left guard instead of left tackle. So if you actually buy into Cam Robinson being the starting left tackle in Jacksonville, I do think Evan Neal could definitely at least spend a year or 2 playing left guard before actually kicking out to the tackle position. So an option. It's an option at least, but it's
you love the options.
You love the options.
Because Aiden Hutchinson you're just going to have no value probably from now. What could you see anything happening? Obviously it's always changing. Could you see anything happening where he jumps and you should buy him at any point, or should you be going with those guys, the guy that Evan Neal?
Yeah, I think it's a wait and see approach right now. I would like to see what Jacksonville does in free agency, or if they end up landing another, quality offensive line starter. That's when I do think like that would signal pretty heavily that Aiden Hutchinson is the guy. They definitely think he is, by far the best player in this draft, and that's the reason why they want to take him at a position of need. But outside of them, that free agent decision, I'm taking a wait and see approach, because he's at minus 190, I think, on DraftKings, minus 280, I think, on FanDuel. So he is, heavy odds on favorite. I do think the ship has sailed already on him, I would say, if you were trying to get him, from yesterday when he was at plus 600 on DraftKings. So.
All right, Evan Neal, first overall pick. That's right now.
That's who I would be on if my hand was forced. But I have enough Evan Neal exposure to the point where I'm not doubling down.
All right. Now. All right. The next one is first quarterback selected. And we've kind of mulled through this a little bit throughout this podcast. Not a great quarterback class. I mean, we've talked about Malik Willis, so I'm assuming that is the guy who you're probably going to right now say is the best quarterback to be taken first. Right. With what we have.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, were some reports of, like Deshaun Watson is a foregone conclusion to Pittsburgh if things go correctly with this legal trouble here on Friday. I don't necessarily buy into that. I do think that Malik Willis to Pittsburgh still makes a ton of sense. And I think they're going to have to trade up in order to do it. So, our friend and colleague Brad Spielberger had Malik Willis, mocked at number 2 overall going to the Detroit Lions here in PFF's latest mock draft. I don't necessarily think that's where he's going to land, but I do think he's going to land in the top 10. And there's just no other quarterback prospect that's even should become remotely close to being selected in the top 10. So minus 170, I think there's still decent enough value to the point where he is definitely, the top quarterback here. So I don't mind that one.
Kenny Pickett in his small hands.
The small hands. Scared of small hands.
Did that scare you off? I mean, that was it.
No, it wasn't.
That's always so funny.
Right. I mean, it definitely okay. It matters a little bit. It doesn't matter anywhere close to as much as people think.
No, it does. Right? Yeah, no. I think Richard Sherman and the Richard Sherman podcast was really good. He did an emergency pod yesterday once Russell was traded, but he said the same thing. He's like, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Joe Burrow had really small hands, a couple of years ago. And now, look where he was today. So I always think it's funny, though. It always makes me laugh because we always get one story like that where like his hands are too small to be in the league.
Half an inch too small. Can't play in the NFL level.
It makes me laugh. Oh my gosh. So the quarterback class, the top quarterback in this year's class, do you think might not even crack the top 5 from last year's class? True or false?
I mean, if you were asking me last year at this time, I would say definitely there's no chance. But like the quarterback class last year, like their rookie year was bad, right? Like it was kind of really bad, to be honest with you.
No, I know it was not fun.
So I think, a guy like Malik Willis, given, given like his athletic profile now coming out of the combine, like he can definitely be a viable starter, I would say, from day one in this league in the right offensive scheme. Right. I do think, they're going to obviously have to tailor some things for him to actually be able to get outside the pocket, make some throws on the run, give a lot more the RPO type of look. But I think they can definitely be an efficient, top 15, top 10 option offensively with him at quarterback. So outside of him, though, it's there's just not much there, I would say. So I can't get too excited about it.
But what a great time for Malik Willis, though, and some of these quarterbacks, because there are so many quarterback needy teams this year in the NFL with the draft, and it's really a weak free agent class. So for them, it's, I agree with you. He should not make it past, he should not go beyond top 10, essentially, is what you said.
That's my prediction right now. That's where it's at. I think it's probably going to be a team trading up, but there's also, obviously like Carolina and, can still be there potentially, or Seattle now. Right. So.
Yeah, true. All right. First running back selected. So this market was interesting when I was reading your article, because it's a situation that really, you said, isn't fully adjusted to the combine performances that we saw, which were absolutely insane. Right. So there's value there right now because nothing has really adjusted so far.
Right, definitely. I mean, so basically Brees Hall had really, really strong combine numbers, measured out really well, ran really well, tested really well. Kenneth Walker actually did fairly well as well, but given some of the other things, I think Timo Risky basically wrote a really good article on this. Like his 40-yard dash time is probably a little bit overstated right now. I think he was at like 4.38. Okay. Given his other testing capabilities, we would have probably had him closer at an expectation of running like a 4.46. So I think he's maybe not as explosive as his 40 time currently indicates. I think his game speed definitely speaks to that. So I think Brees Hall is definitely the clear favorite here. Probably should be higher up than, minus 175, unless the team falls in love with like, a specific running back for whatever reason, whether they don't think Brees Hall can offer, sort of upside in that particular category that that particular player can. I think Brees Hall just makes way too much sense. So minus 175. I know it's a little bit chalky going with some, heavy, favorites right now, but I do think that is definitely probably two of the best betting opportunities. So I do think Brees Hall minus 175 is a pretty decent look for, a bet right now on the draft prop as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was he was Austin, Renners, like all those guys. He was just one of the big winners from the combine, right. Especially like his speed, just put his speed aside from anything else. I mean, he was explosive. He looked super, his athleticism was on full display, right? His 40-inch vertical jump was incredible. 10-inch broad jump, everything like that. So do you see him sneaking into the first round, or are you more think now? I didn't think so, but I had to ask.
Yeah, I think it's going to be mid to late second rounds where we probably see him at, like 50th or so pick or something like that. But yeah, I think finally teams are going to, not go with a running back in the first round. So that's my prediction as well. No running backs are going to get selected in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft. So
bet on that, guys.
Bet on that. We will be able to bet on that here soon enough, I think.
Soon. So, I know. Those will be the fun ones. Well, the last one is this one, and this is the best one, though. The first wide receiver selected in the NFL draft. And that is the most probably wide open, like multi-way market being offered for the draft right now.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, Garrett Wilson's kind of moved in. I think he's like plus 100 now, was plus 125 yesterday. So market definitely likes him. I do think a lot of people like his combine performance. I don't know. This is a spot where I kind of want to roll the dice because we've seen in years past the speed demon / guy, the deep threat sort of capability kind of seems to win out in a lot of situations. I know he's hurt right now, but I don't think there's a player more explosive at the wide receiver position than Jameson Williams. So given the fact that he still has an ACL tear and isn't going to be working out, obviously it's keeping his price down a little bit, but there could be one or two teams fall in love with him. And I do think that could maybe see him just be a little bit overdrafted before some of these other guys maybe falling in that, 12 to 14 pick range. So at plus 1,000, plus 900, plus 800, I don't mind a little sprinkle on Jameson Williams, kind of rolling the dice a little bit. But I think it makes sense given his athletic profile, I would say.
You know who's been getting love today is Drake London. From USC.
He's always getting love.
He's always getting love. But now I think it was Steve said it best. And he was like, the Commanders just absolutely need to try and build around Carson Wentz. So he was big on that. He's saying that, Terry McLaurin, which is kind of, again, crazy to think about, that this is probably the best quarterback that Terry McLaurin is playing with.
Disaster.
Think about that. That Terry, he said, I was getting quotes from him, and he was like, Terry McLaurin has the opportunity to, explode. And I'm like,
wow,
oh my God. Well, it's because
Steve is a closet Carson Wentz fan. It sounds
he's
like
the best quarterback he's played with.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
That's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the half that he had Ryan Fitzpatrick, I would say, for sure.
That's
but that
true.
was only one half of one game.
Yeah, not even.
So
he does like Drake London. So that I just wanted to get your thoughts. If you're maybe looking at him, I don't know what his odds are.
So he's at plus 150. So he's the second most likely, basically outside of Garrett Wilson's. But I don't know, like the big body, not necessarily like possession type receiver, but more of like the jumping capability of receiver or whatever downfield. I just don't think the league gets as excited about those guys that need to win in the contested catch situations, more so than the guys that can separate relatively quickly. So that's my reasoning for maybe not having him be the first wide receiver selected.
He is massive.
He is massive.
6'5",
wide catch
210.
frame, right? I think I didn't see if he actually jumped at he actually didn't do the vertical jump, but I do think they thought he could potentially break the combine record of like 45 inches or something. So he can get up there. No doubt about that. But that hasn't necessarily been the profile that's been the first wide receiver selected here in the past few years. And it's not necessarily where teams I think are gravitating towards. So that's the reason why I don't think he is the correct bet, especially being the second shortest odds in the current market. So I don't know. I'm rolling the dice with maybe one of these other guys, I think, right now, unless something drastic changes the outlook here and we get information here relatively soon. So
yeah, I mean, Drake London, he's 11 on PFF's big board. Garrett Wilson's 12, so it's kind of give or take there. I like it. All right. Give me your thoughts. What's going to happen? What news are we going to be interrupted with this weekend? Kirk
Cousins is traded to the Indianapolis Colts is the hope and prayer, basically. Because I want to be on the same level as the Seattle Seahawks fans. I want to bottom out Minnesota, Kwasi Adufo-Mensah to have a complete clean slate and go through the rebuild correctly here. So Kirk Cousins to Indianapolis just makes too much sense. Get even more decent quarterback play over to the AFC and out of the NFC. I think it's just too fitting right now. I would say
lock it in. We can be in pain together.
Lock it in.
Hasn't that already come for you though? Like haven't you?
I mean, the last 35 years of my life have been pain, so I'm ready for a newfound kind of pain that hopefully cuts deep. I don't know what it is. So.
Oh, it's awful. I'll let you know. I'll message you when it happens. I feel like you'll be more excited for that.
I will be. I'll be like more ecstatic than I've been in the last like probably 5 years or something. So
I love it. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening to us. Go lock in those NFL draft props. We will be back with you next week and have a great weekend.